Hey guys, welcome back to the second video, second part of
Cherry's birth.
Cherry's birth. So where were we?
So this one we're going to talk about our actual hospital stay and the trials and tribulations that we went through with her in the hospital and then taking her home. Where we left off was after we gave birth. Sorry, when Sharu gave birth, I was here for the ride. So after they stabilized her in the hospital, and they gave us like maybe 2-3 minutes of skin to skin time, take a couple pictures with our daughter.
Actually, we didn't get any skin to skin. She was wrapped up and she was just given to me to hold for like maybe 5 minutes. We took like 2 pictures.
Not even 5 minutes, but yeah, very, very short amount of time.
And then they put her in her little transportation device and they took her away to her hospital.
Yeah.
Children's hospital.
And I followed. I went over with her, accompanied her in the ambulance to make sure she was settled and to provide whatever comfort I could. I was holding her hand, making sure that she knew I was there, even though I couldn't hold her because of all the tubing. And obviously, Sharu had to stay back, recover, and she had a lot of time to herself at that time. So what were you thinking?
I didn't have actually time to think. They were stitching me up. I got an epidural. Since I was induced, it was really painful. So I was still recovering from that. My parents came over, so they were with me. So I wasn't alone, but I didn't have my daughter, who I just gave birth to, with me, and my husband wasn't with me either at that point. The nurses were very nice. One good thing that came out of it was that we got the VIP room. I guess they all felt bad for me, but it was very nice. And they took care of me mentally and physically. So shout out to all those nurses and doctors. Thank you so much.
So yeah, Canadian healthcare. I didn't pay a dime. Anyways, I got to the hospital. I got to the children's hospital with my daughter. They were setting her up, putting wires in her, putting tubes in her, making sure she settled and making sure that she was stabilized. After that, I went back to the women's hospital to see how Sharu was doing.
So as soon as I could, I asked my doctor if I could go see her in her hospital, which meant that I needed to get a pass to get out of my hospital, which he graciously agreed. And we went, I think in the evening, just to see her, and it was the first time I saw her without being loopy from the epidural. It was heartbreaking to see her with all those wires around her. She was so tiny and she was so cute and little.
The side of her head was shaved for a PICC line.
Yes, and that happened too. The nurses apologized. They also gave me a pouch of her hair that they shaved for the PICC line. And they also assured us that it doesn't hurt, so don't worry. That's what they told us, I think.
And that's what we believe for our sanity.
So that was that night. We came back to the hospital, my hospital, and then the next day we were discharged, and we went straight to her hospital, the children's hospital, to see her. All we could do was sit beside her, hold her hand, and not cry.
Oh, but we failed miserably. We all cried. So one of the good things that they let us do was hold her, even though it was a very involved process. So because of all the lines and the tubes,
the machines,
yeah. So a team of nurses would have to come and basically maneuver everything around us so that we could hold Cherry for a bit. So it was worth every moment though, because we got to do skin to skin. Sharu got to try breastfeeding.
I just got to hold her, and that was the best feeling ever.
Yeah. Cherry tried to breastfeed from me, but I got nothing to give her.
I wonder if we have the pictures.
No, it's not appropriate.
It was really nice.
It was the silver lining in this terrible time.
Terrible time. Then the fourth day came, and that's when her surgery was scheduled.
Yeah, so it was it's called an arterial switch, where they go into her heart and just flip the arteries. And the surgeon came, gave us the rundown of what was going on. There's a couple surprises in there, because there were things I didn't know about that they were gonna do. Like they were gonna.
Well, they didn't find it until they did their own ultrasound on her, not through me. So that's when they saw all these different things that she had as well, in addition to the TGA.
But regardless, I had no other choice but to accept. And
we had no choice.
yeah, that was the longest 4 hours of my life.
4 hours of our life.
They wheeled her in at 9 in the morning, and on the way to the operating theater, I was just crying my eyes out, and telling Sherry that I loved her. Obviously, it's very sad, and
I mean, the way we're saying it right now is not how we.
oh, no. This is us coping with humor.
Yes. We were heartbroken. We were miserable. We just didn't know what to expect out of this whole entire situation. But we had hope, because they told us that, she will be okay, and that's what they told us. So at around 2:00, the surgeon came out, said everything was good, everything was successful, and that we could see her in about 15 to 20 minutes in PCICU, which is the Pediatric Cardiology Intensive Care Unit. So yeah, we
We expected the worst, but it was more than that. There's more tubes, more wires, and now she had all this red dye on her, this antiseptic.
That was the most scariest thing to see,
It
because
looked like blood.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I first saw her. And I mean, oh my God, there's blood all over her. But they explained that it's just the antiseptic that they used during the surgery. They explained to us what happened, and that everything should be good from there on.
Oh, but she was also really, really swollen, because she was on the bypass.
She was
just full of fluid.
She was full of fluid, yes.
She looked like the Michelin Man.
But I mean, we were happy. We were just glad to get it over with, and that it was successful. And they told us that, in 5 to 10 days she might be coming home.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days. If all things going well, we can be discharged in 10 days.
So we were excited. We were very excited.
But very naive. we wouldn't be making this video if it was 10 days.
So that night she had a couple of jet episodes, which were supposed to be normal.
It's when her heart rate shoots really, really high.
They said it was something that happens normally when kids go through bypass. So we were like, okay, whatever. Next day, we got discharged from the PCICU back to NICU. And she was doing okay. It felt like she was doing good.
Yeah, it was smooth sailing for like 2-3 days.
Yeah, we were really surprised. We were like, okay, this is great.
And then the fourth day came, and that was when things just started going downhill. The first thing was the pacemaker. So after the surgery, the surgeons left in a temporary pacemaker in her heart. So, in case something happens, they have a backup plan. They can always pace her heart.
Like, for example, that jet episode that she had, they were able to control it using that backup pacemaker.
Yeah. So, unfortunately for us, at that time, we didn't need the pacemaker. So, one of the surgeon's little helpers came and yanked it out. And when I say yank, I actually mean yank, kind of like a lawnmower. We were very surprised at the methods they used to get it out. And to this day, I still think it had something to do with what happened next. But apparently it was standard operating procedure, and they friggin' lawnmowered it out of there. Anyways, it was just our luck that the pacemaker leads was stitched onto one of her arteries or something, or a blood vessel, something like that. And when they yanked it out, it made that heart blood vessel bleed. And what happened was that the blood was starting to pool in her pleural cavity. So
around her lungs.
Around her lungs. So not in her lungs, but around it. So what this does is it takes up volume in your, I guess your body cavity for your lungs to expand, and that decreases the
space that she has to be able to breathe properly.
Yeah, so her lung function was compromised, and we first started seeing this when her O2 sats started to drop. And we're just wondering, like, what's going on?
I mean, that was the whole point of the surgery, right? So her oxygen level goes up, but suddenly they were going down again.
Yeah, she was satting at like 95 to 100, so this sudden change scared us.
Yeah, and she came down to like 80 again. Yeah. So she came down back to 80, and she's supposed to be between 95 to 100 at that point.
So we got the nurses, and they were concerned as well. And next thing you know, we're doing an X-ray, and they see this there's a pool of blood in her pleural cavity. It's like, oh no, well, oh no, right?
Well, then they put in a JP, basically a pipe that goes into her pleural cavity
to drain the blood.
To drain the blood.
I remember they tried using fresh frozen plasma to cause a clot, so that would that would stop the bleeding, but I don't think that worked.
But it didn't work. So that, and then they put in the JP, so that stopped. And then that day we were like, okay.
Minor setback, but we're still on our way out.
And then the next day when we came back, her heart rate was slashed in half. So instead of being at like 120, 130...
No, it should be like 140.
140, she was at 80. I remember that. And then she was slowly going down. And, well, what they found was that she had a 2-to-1 heart block.
Yeah, so...
And he believes, and I think I do too, that it was because of that lead being pulled from her body, from the pacemaker.
But officially, the explanation was during the surgery to repair her coronaries. They nicked her AV node or SA node, or the invisible nerve connections that connected to, and that's how
she got the 2-to-1 block.
That's how you got the 2-to-1 block. So this is where you'd need a pacemaker. And she didn't have one because they already yanked it out. So, at that point in time, the pacemaker specialist came and talked to us. The doctors came and talked to us and said, you know what, let's just give it some time.
If it doesn't improve by itself, then they are thinking of putting in an actual pacemaker in her body, a permanent kind.
Yeah, but they wanted us to wait because during the surgery, there's a lot of action that goes on in there, and it could have caused some of the blood vessels or something to swell, and that could have compressed the nerves and caused that 2-to-1 heart block. But we don't know, right?
So, well, then that happened that day, and then we went, we didn't go home that day. They actually asked us if we can stay back, and normally when people stay back in ICU, it's because their kids are high risk. Well, this is when we realized there's something really wrong, or something that they might not even be able to control. We were very scared and terrified. And then next day, all our fears kind of came true.
Yeah, they called us on our phones and said, you have to come to your daughter's bedside immediately. She is going to go in for an emergency surgery. Which was the scariest thing ever. I remember just standing there and being afraid to even look at her because I didn't know what to expect. They wheeled her into the surgery. As soon as we came in, they explained to us exactly what was happening, and that they needed to go immediately. And they took her, and all I was doing was praying really hard to make sure that she's okay, because we didn't know what was gonna happen when she came out. Yeah. So the official explanation is that one of the coronaries that was reattached to her heart was narrowing, and that caused a restriction of blood flow to her heart muscle. And because of that, that was causing, it could be one of the reasons that caused a 2-to-1 heart block. It was causing her sats to fall, her vitals to crash, that kind of thing.
There's a lot of things happening.
Yeah.
Those 5 hours were the longest 5 hours of her life.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were going to get out of this at the end. But then those 5 hours ended. We went back to PCICU again. And she was again swollen because she had to go through a bypass again the second time. And she looked Yeah, it was very heartbreaking for us to watch that again happening to her. And then that day was the start of our long 2 months of just staying at PCSU for 24/7.
Yeah, so we basically, for the next 2 months, lived in the hospital. I would go to work in the morning and then come back to the hospital and stayed and slept on the couch.
And I just stayed there. I lived there. That couch that he talked about was my living room, dining room, everything. And I would only go out to walk out of a room when the nurses kicked me out. But other than that, I was just in that room, just being by her, and just waiting, because, well, every single day something new came up. Something new that wasn't good came up.
Some rare complication.
One of the rare complications were the chylothorax.
So apparently it's really rare, and what had happened during the surgery was they nicked her lymphatic system or something, or one of the lymphatic vessels, and it was leaking chyle into her pleural cavity. So it's like the whole blood thing, the pacemaker leads blood thing, but round two. And chylothorax is, I would say, the biggest thorn in our side in the entire hospital stay.
Yeah.
It was the reason why we stayed that long in the hospital, was because we were trying to control this leak into her lungs.
And every day in the morning they do rounds, and at her bedside they would talk about this chylothorax, and they would talk about how much output she had. And I remember for the first 2 or 3 weeks the numbers always kept going up. It wasn't coming down at all, and I just didn't know if it was ever going to end. It was the most scary thing ever. And on top of that, to control the chylothorax, she had to be NPO, which is basically she couldn't get anything that had fat in it to eat, and she was tube fed, so she wasn't getting any food that was anything.
Yeah, all her nutrition was intravenous. So when you imagine a baby, you imagine a chunky little thing that looks like a Michelin Man. Well, at one point she did look like a Michelin Man because she was full of fluid.
But
right?
From the bypass.
But after that, she was bone. She was just literally skin and bones, because she only got her nutrition through her.
Through the lines that she had. And it wasn't food. I mean, if she wasn't getting any food that could fill her up, it was just to keep her alive. Yeah. So then chylothorax, and then there was a whole issue about her vocal cords being paralyzed when they took out her the tubes that she was intubated with, which was scary because basically it meant that she might not ever speak.
Not speak, but like she wouldn't be able to use her vocal cords.
She won't be able to, which is basically, isn't that speaking?
Well, like some people, like, anyways.
Okay, whatever. And then, so then that happened, and then after that, she had issues with her lungs again. A part of her lung collapsed. So at that point, they were weaning her off of the oxygen. What is it called? She was intubated, and then she was coming down off her oxygen. So she was, those tubes were taken out. Then she just had like.
She had CPAP, BPAP.
Yeah, well, she went on CPAP and BPAP after.
Well,
but they were trying to get rid of the oxygen thing that she needed, but then her part of her lung collapsed, so she then went back on CPAP and BPAP, which is basically high flow oxygen to keep her on the ventilators. And then
she had a pacemaker.
Then she had a pacemaker surgery.
So the whole 2-to-1 heart block thing, that never went away, despite what the doctor said about it being swollen blood vessels or something compressing the nerve.
Yeah, so a month, I believe half a month later.
I don't remember the timeline, it's all muddied now, but she ended up needing a little pacemaker. And this is a whole other thing, because again, she did not eat, she did not grow, she was actually weighing less than her birth weight. And there are different types of pacemakers, and the type that she needed was
the smallest one they have.
The smallest one they had, but the one that she actually needed was bigger, and they couldn't fit it in her. So they were actually looking to breaking her ribs so that they could fit the pacemaker that she needed in her. Fortunately, we got away with using the smallest pacemaker, which is the not as advanced one, but it wouldn't.
It's the most basic thing that does the job.
But it doesn't do an optimal job. Let's say that. For those who are wondering, it's a 1 lead versus a 2 lead pacemaker. So there you
go. So she went through that surgery. She came out of it. That wasn't that big of a surgery, so it lasted for an hour maybe.
It was 3 hours.
3 hours. The surgeon just came and told me she's good. She came out of it and she's okay now. Jokingly, he did tell us not to ever come back again after that. Then she went back to her PCIC room. We stayed there for maybe a week or 2 more after that.
Well, then there was also like a couple like sub-surgeries, you'd call it. There was one where they had to do a Broviac line. So this was a line that goes directly to her heart to give her medication.
Yeah, because
as opposed to having lines in her arms where she could rip them out or it would become blocked. This Broviac line let them basically have a direct line to her heart to give her medication.
Yeah, because those PICC lines kept getting blocked because she had them for such a long time, and they don't normally expect you to have the PICC lines for that long. So she had the Broviac, and then after that, what happened?
There was more. Come on.
What happened?
The cath labs.
Oh yeah, those cath labs. Oh my God, the X-rays, the cath labs. Basically, cath labs is where they take her. They put a dye in through. So they can see where the dye flows through her heart to make sure that her heart was good. They did that twice. Once was because we were afraid that something is going wrong again, because there was a moment in time when her heart was working perfectly fine and she wasn't pacing using the pacemaker. So we thought, hey, everything is going good. And then 2 weeks later, she went back to using pacemaker, and so we all got scared again. So they did a cath lab at that time. So yeah, I mean, there was so many things that took place. It was nerve-wracking. And then eventually, one day, they told us that she's okay and that she can leave the PCICU and go down to just a children's unit just to recover, and then soon after she can go home after that. Soon after that, we were sent to the recovery rooms and
we call it the recovery ward.
Recovery ward. She basically just had to learn to feed and do the normal newborn things, and she did beautifully, and she was being taken off of sedation, which was also a tough thing because she was on sedation for such a long time. It took a while, but she got through it. She bravely got through it, and then soon after that, it was just a day-by-day basis of getting closer to our goal of going home. So she started to learn how to feed properly and with proper food. So she was gaining some weight and she looked so cute. Theo's parents came over from Ontario to visit us and see their first grandchild, which was so nice. Then what happened?
Well, there's also a lot of like mini events in between that kind of gave us a scare. For example, the first day we went to the recovery ward, we thought that her lung was collapsing again because she was inconsolable. She was red in the face. Her sats were higher, but still kind of in the normal range. Her blood pressure was really high because she was agitated. So
we got scared.
We got scared, and we called something called the Rapid Response Team, which is a team that came to immediately assess the child, or assess a baby, and let us know whether they need to be taken back up to intensive care, or whether they can stay at the recovery ward. So, much to our embarrassment, it ended up being Cherry just wanting some Tylenol because she was in pain. So after they gave her some Tylenol, she calmed down and went to bed. But it just goes to show that we're very hyper aware.
Vigilant.
Yeah, very vigilant on her condition, and we did not want a repeat of her lung failure.
Yeah, by then, I mean, we went through so much. I think even a little thing just set us off. I mean, when it came to her, everything just seemed like it had to be done then and there, like it had to be solved because something could go wrong and she would react to it really quickly and something could go really bad then.
Yeah, well, one of the hardest transitions that we had to do was from PCICU to the recovery ward. Because in PCICU, because everything is so, everything is basically an emergency, we were used to having tests done within the hour, having results within half a day, and treatment plan ready to go at a moment's notice.
It was immediate. Everything was immediate.
So in the recovery ward, they only did rounds once per day. There was only we had to share a nurse. Like these little things, they may seem inconsequential, but they really played with our psyche.
So we were happy to be in the recovery ward, but at the same time, the little inconveniences that we went through also annoyed us. But you have to forgive us for being that way because we were, just came from the biggest trauma of our lives.
So I feel like we're ranting, but the gist of it is Cherry went through a lot. I think we did a decent job kind of letting you guys know the timeline. So quick rundown, diagnosed with TGA, Sharu gave birth, and then first surgery. First surgery went well, but then complications. Second surgery to fix those complications. Finding out that she has pacing, or she needed a pacemaker. So third pacemaker surgery, and then there's a couple sub-surgery in there. So like the Broviac line insertion, the catheter labs.
Then taking out the Broviac line.
And then there's also the multitudes of fetal echoes, X-rays, ultrasounds. Every time where we could get more information on her condition, it was always nerve-wracking because we wanted to know whether she was okay or not, whether she was improving or
the chylothorax,
the chylothorax was like definitely big.
She had so many tubes in her, just taking out fluid, putting in fluid.
Yeah.
But they all got taken out eventually, and at the end of the day,
she had a couple of cool scars to show for it.
Yeah.
Joining the Zipper Club. Yeah. So then, for her, everything it ended up being okay. We were finally discharged in the second week of April, and she was born the last week of January. So that's
2 months.
2 months. Yeah.
We are very grateful to have her in our lives. We are very proud of her. She's a beautiful girl, very smart, very sassy, has her own opinion, and is very stubborn. But we wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. However, it wouldn't be emotionally traumatic without us talking about some of the other kids we met in the PCICU. Obviously, not every kid makes it out of the hospital alive, and we knew a couple of kids who didn't make it, and that really impacted us, even though Cherry was okay. First, we got to know those families, and
we grew close to them.
And I guess, again, it's part of being naive, but when I first went into the hospital, I thought, everyone recovers, everyone goes home. But when I saw that first death, that really shook my core. Because you know what? It brought the point home that it might be Cherry. Cherry might not make it out of there.
Yeah, it was really bad because I remember after that, every single thing became a point of discussion because I didn't want any stones left unturned. It's just because I didn't want anything, even the smallest thing, to be an issue for her.
Yeah, that was the part of us being hyper vigilant about requesting all the tests, even to Cherry's detriment. Like one of the cath labs
was our fault.
She didn't really need it, but we just wanted to, again, leave no stone unturned.
We were scared. I think that's one of the reasons why we couldn't bring ourselves to talk about it for such a long time. Not a lot of people in our life even know
what
the details.
Yeah, or
the details about any of these things.
they don't know what CHD is. I think in my social circle, in my family, I'm the first one to have a child with CHD, with
A congenital heart defect.
Congenital heart defect.
So, so for our friends and family out there who just found out, sorry for not telling, but it is a hard topic for us to talk about, and we are talking now because, well, we figured someone else out there might need that information, or that just to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. At least it did for us.
Yeah.
And thank you for
Watching, I guess.
Thank you for watching and listening to us rant about our birth story. I know it's not normal like what you hear on YouTube normally, but this was our story.
Yeah.